The first way that we're gonna make bone broth today is kind of more gap style. That is where you just take the whole chicken, you put it in the pot, and you cook it for a couple of hours on a very low temperature. And it's a very, very short cook time. And the idea behind that is if you have any kind of histamine issues or severe gut issues or things like that, when you're on the GAPS diet, in the beginning, you cook it this way it just makes it that much more gut friendly. You're not gonna pull all the nutrients and the minerals and things out of the bones, but you are gonna get a lot of the gelatin and the collagen and all that kind of stuff in there because you have all the bones and you have the connective tissues and the skin and just all that kind of goodness is going to be in the actual stock. And so all I'm going to do with this is get my hair out of the way, but all I'm going to do with this is cut this thing open. Actually, inside the pot would be a smarter way to do it so it'll make a huge mess. To this, we're going to go ahead and add roughly a gallon of water. You can just add enough water to cover it, just enough to cook it, but I found when I was doing GAPS, I didn't have a problem with adding more than enough basically to cover. So I think I'm gonna add between 3/4 and a gallon. I'll let you know what I do. If you really want to increase your chances of it getting thick and gelling, you're gonna want to try and consider adding chicken feet to it. I just get these at my local co-op. They're frozen. It's a big pack of them. They're $1.99 a pound, and this is like 1.26 pounds of chicken feet. I don't know how many are in here. If I had to guess, I'd say maybe like 7 or 8 pairs of feet. So a lot of people use chicken feet to make only chicken feet just to make a chicken feet broth. It's really healthy. It's supposed to be really gelatinous and just really good. But I like to add it to my regular just chicken broth, chicken stock, whatever I'm cooking. I like to add it to it just to make sure that it has an extra chance of gelling and just for all the good properties and the good things that are in it because there's so many different connective tissues. There's lots of joints and bones and like the feet have like these pads on them that are just straight, basically collagen, gelatin kind of stuff. Oh, that was gross. I wasn't expecting it to do that, but I should have. So I'm gonna be changing here pretty quick because it got all over my shirt. So anyways, the feet are a really great place to get lots of extra collagen, gelatin, minerals, all kinds of amazing, wonderful, yummy goodness. So all we're gonna do with this is we're just gonna put it on the stove and bring it up to pretty much a boil, almost a boil, like just a heavy simmer. And then we are gonna skim off the white stuff that comes up on the top and add some salt to it and just let it go for a couple hours. The next way that I like to make the chicken stock, chicken bone broth, whatever you want to call it, this is my normal way that I do it. I typically will roast off the chickens in the oven and I will separate the meat from the bones and save the meat in the freezer for when I want to actually make any kind of stock or broth. So this is I'm not really following a recipe. This is just what I do. And since this doesn't have any of the meat or anything like that, it typically doesn't have as much flavor as the meat stock will. So I like to add a bunch of spices and herbs and things like that to this, just to make sure that it has lots of flavor to it. And we're gonna have to kind of toy with which pans we're gonna be using, because I usually always use the one that I just used, and that's the only one that I ever use. So I thought this might fit in here, but I'm you know, thought he farted, right? Nope, that's dumb. Okay, so for this one, we're gonna be much more careful to make sure, especially because it's in such a large pot, there's a lot of room at the bottom there, since it's frozen. So I'm probably just gonna add, let's not assume anything. Let's just do this. Okay, so there is half of a cup or half of a gallon. I think we're gonna do 3/4 of a gallon. There we go, 3/4 of a gallon. So this one we're gonna do exactly the same thing. I'm gonna put it on the burner on high, bring it up to a pretty much a boil, skim off all the white crud that comes up to the surface, and then at that point we're gonna add salt, vinegar, and a bunch of spices to it. So if you are interested at all in how I actually got this baggie full of bones, it's a bones, cartilage, all the pan drippings, just everything that was in there. This is leftover from when I did the canning chicken video. I'll go ahead and link that video up here so you can see kind of the process that I do with that. I'm sure at some point I'll do it again, but for now, that's what I have. So let's put this on the burner. All right, so now that this is starting to foam, I want to show you what I do next at this stage. So what you need to do is to skim all of this. You can see this white foam that's kind of coming to the surface. And you just need a slotted spoon. I use this. This is the best tool that I have found. I got this at a thrift store for, I don't even, like $1. But you can also use any one of these. Just any kind of a slotted spoon will do the trick. You're just trying to get the foam and leave the liquid, the water, the broth. If you don't have a slotted spoon, you can use this. Or you can even just use a regular kitchen spoon. Just the most ideal thing to use is this. But you don't have to use that. If you don't have it, don't go out and buy it. But if you come across it at the thrift store, totally pick it up. So all we do, just grab a plate and skim it off. And see, if you got the slotted spoon, all you're gonna get is the foamy yuck. And what this stuff is it's kind of the toxins. It's the ickies, it's the weird tasting stuff. It's the stuff that is, you know, deposited in the birds that they just have not filtered through their body, basically. So you can, if you choose not to, or if you forget about it, like the world's not gonna end if you don't actually filter this out. But it will give it kind of an off flavor from what I hear. I've never actually forgotten, so I can't really attest to that. You want to make sure that you're doing this right when it forms. If you leave it and you let it start to boil, it'll reincorporate back into the broth. Like, you can't just do it anytime you choose. Like when you first put it onto the heat, you got to make sure you have, like, you know, 20 minutes to a half hour to actually watch it and make sure that it gets in good shape, basically. I mean, you don't have to like sit here and stare at it, but you just got to make sure that you have a little bit of time devoted. You just want to get it started right. Okay, so now is the time that I usually turn the heat down a bit. You want to make sure that you don't overheat this. You want to make sure that you're not like bringing this up to a huge rapid boil or anything like that. I think you're fairly safe if you do it very quickly in the beginning, but I don't see any reason to actually do that, so I don't. I'm pretty cautious with it because the gelatin and, you know, the collagen, stuff like that is the main reason that I make this stuff, especially the chicken variety of it, because I just drink this by the mugful. So I'm very careful in making sure that I don't overheat it, because that will break down the gelatin, it'll break down the collagen, and, you know, I'm sure it won't like completely destroy it if you do it quickly, but if you're like cooking this completely at a boil or a too high of a simmer, it's not gonna gel. For the gap style of the chicken broth, all we're gonna do is add salt to it. It's different from all the other ones, which you're gonna add apple cider vinegar to. This one, just in the intro stage, we don't add the apple cider vinegar. We just add a 1/4 cup of salt. Even though I'm trying to do a gap style one, I'm still just gonna add in the apple cider vinegar because I'm not actually doing gaps. I'm just showing you how to make it gap style. So it's not gonna have any difference in gelling. I believe it's just for pulling out the nutrients from the bones. So you're not gonna get any better gel from this, just healthier, but it also will pull the nutrients out of the bones. And if you have any kind of a histamine issue, you don't want to pull anything out of the bones because that's where a lot of histamine apparently is held. I guess, don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it is. So this one is totally done. And this one, we are just going to regulate it to a kind of a simmer. And then it's just going to be going, right now it's 11:09, and I'm probably going to let it go until about 1 o'clock. Just gonna let it go for a couple of hours. On to this one. We're gonna do the same thing with this. We're gonna add the salt and the apple cider vinegar. 1/4 cup of each. So that's it for now. We're just gonna regulate the temperature. I'll bring you back for a quick shot to show you kind of what you're looking for as far as simmering and bubbles. Never mind, I don't have to. This one's perfect. So this is kind of what you're looking for with the bubbles. You just want a little bit. Nothing crazy. You don't want it to simmer too hard, just kind of some bubbles. That's all you're looking for. If you cook it and where it bubbles too much, like I said, you're gonna break down the gelatin, the collagen, things like that. You don't want to cook it at a high speed or a high temperature. So now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna go ahead and spice up this. What I like to add to that kind of varies. The way that I like to do this is completely random. Okay, so I'm just gonna take a bunch of pepper. Roughly that much. Some turmeric. I should probably measure the turmeric. So usually the way that I measure the turmeric is just with about a cupful. So I'm going to do that because I've tried to actually measure this out and it never turns out correctly. Which is why I haven't actually released a video on how to do this yet, because every time I try and measure it, it's just funky. So I'm not going to measure it, and I'm just going to show you what I'm doing. Okay, so we got about that much turmeric. And then the coriander. Again, just filling up a lid to about that much. Sage. If you're going to can this, don't put this in here. But I don't anticipate canning this batch, so. I'm probably going to freeze most of this. It's just going to take place of the pumpkin that I got out there. Okay, so and with most of my bone broth, the chicken broth that I make, I like to add a bunch of more kind of digestive friendly herbs to it. About that much. I can't remember the actual term for it, but it's basically just, it's an aid and it helps your digestion. You know, a lot of these herbs are, if I can look up the term, I'll go ahead and put it here somewhere. But so thyme, about that much. Cardamom. Use a very, very small amount of this stuff. This stuff is just stupid expensive. I was looking at the co-op the other day. That's where I get all my spices and herbs. I get them in bulk. That's why it's in a different jar. It was actually a coriander jar, but now it's cardamom. It's like, I think it's almost $60 a pound. It's ridiculously stupid expensive. So I go very light on it. Just kind of get the essence of it. And about that much. Plus that. I think that's about everything. We already added the salt to it at first. Like 2 bay leaves. So we're just going to stir this real quick, which I almost forgot to do. And this is just going to get set up at that low simmer that I showed you guys earlier. And it's going to be here cooking on the stove realistically until I get home from work tomorrow. So this is probably going to be going for probably about 26, 27-ish, something like that, hours. This one is going to town as well. And this one has about an hour and a half left on it. And I will bring you back when we are all done with that one. All right, so the first of the bone broth is all done. This is the Gap style one. It was very short cook with the whole chicken. And I think it might have been ruined with the, right at the end there. It was really frustrating. I was just doing some work on the computer and then all of a sudden, I hadn't even touched it for the last like 2 hours and then all of a sudden it was just boiling over. So I'm really hoping that that didn't ruin anything, but I mean, we'll find out probably tomorrow. Yeah, probably tomorrow. So anyways, we're gonna taste this. Still tastes good. It just tastes like, maybe a little bit better than a store-bought, like the little packets, not the packets, but the boxes of the chicken broth. That's about what this tastes like. And you can always add more. You really don't need to add much. It's really actually pretty good. I'm super excited for this. Okay, so we're gonna package this up the same way that we do with that I did with the bone broth, and that is just with kind of a refrigerator canning it, and we're gonna put it into the jars, various sizes. This one we're just gonna use these. Some of them I'm gonna use my half-gallon jars. I'm just gonna kind of make it so that it is convenient and easy for me to grab. I don't know what about chicken versus beef broth makes it taste fine when you don't cook it in the chicken broth, but it just is revolting when you do it with beef broth. If anybody knows why that is, I would really like to know, because this tastes delicious and I didn't cook it at all prior to putting it in the pot. You saw me put it in there raw and it tastes delicious, but when you do that with beef broth, like it makes you want to vomit. So anyways, I don't know why I keep moving this around, but I'm gonna stop. Okay, so, all right, I'm not done. So what we're gonna do first is we're just gonna go ahead and pull some of the broth out of here. Broth, stock, whatever. We're gonna pull it out and put it in our jar. And you can see this is like such a different color than if you saw the beef broth video. This is just, it's like murky water kind of. So then we just take our spent lids, because we're not gonna water bath, we're not gonna pressure can this, we're not gonna can this in any way. All we're doing is creating a vacuum based on the heat. That's it. That's all the processing we're gonna do with that, so we're gonna put it in the fridge. This is not shelf stable in any way whatsoever. You can make it shelf stable by using clean lids and pressure canning it, but we're not gonna do that today. That's not what this is about. Someday. But we're still gonna do the same basic procedure. Still gonna leave about 1 inch of headspace. Okay, so we got 9 jars here of some nice bone broth. Meat stock, meat broth. We have gaps stuff. Anyways, so with this, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna put it away on the side of the the counter, and I'm just gonna give it about as much space as I would if I were actually canning, or cool, if I had just pulled it out of the can, something like this. Just enough space to where airflow can go through it, but it's not gonna be anything crazy. You don't want it to be too bunched together because then it won't cool down quickly enough. We wanna get this cooled down enough to be able to put in the fridge within 2 hours. I would say 2 hours is about the max that you wanna leave it out of the fridge, and then I'm gonna put it into the fridge and let it cool down all the way. So, generally, I like to do this a little bit later in the process, but since I got you here, we're just gonna do it. So I like to take all of the feet and the bones, and I just take a pair of tongs. It's best if you have like the straight, just the metal ones. I just take it and tear it apart. Like I just squish them and crush them, and break them as best as I can, just to make sure that I'm getting all of everything out of them. And then I just do it until I get bored with it. Actually, you get the idea. These big ones. If I give this like 6 hours, these ones will break just fine, but right now they're pretty solid. So you kind of want to wait a little while. I'm just showing you while I'm thinking of it. And later on, I'm going to go through and actually break all the big bones. But the feet, surprisingly, are just coming right apart, which is what gave me a false sense of hope that I could do it. Okay, so you get the idea. And so we're just going to do that. Left the burner on. And I'm just going to put the lid back on this one. So this one, in just a few hours, we're gonna go, maybe before I go to bed. Probably before I go to bed, maybe in the morning. I'm just giving you too much information here. You don't need to know these things. So tonight or in the morning, I'm gonna go ahead and go through here, and I'm gonna go ahead and really snap all these bones and make sure that's exposing all like the foot pads and all that kind of stuff. We wanna get as much gelatin out of these things as humanly possible. And in order to do that, we gotta snap all those bones and break up all the cartilage pieces and just make sure that it has every opportunity possible to pull all of the nutrients out of the bones and put them into the broth for our delicious health. Well, my delicious health. Your delicious health if you're making your own. Anyways, we'll see you in a little bit. Well, it'll be a little bit for you, but I don't know how long it's gonna be for me, but we'll see in a bit. So I'm ready to go ahead and show you guys the results of the chicken broth. This is the one that we did just cooking gap style. I'm gonna go ahead, show you the jelly. See what I mean? I'm trying to get it out without spilling it all over. So you can see this one here, total gel. And this one is the most hit or miss. This is just bones and chicken feet. And this one has always been the one that is just It's so difficult to find the right balance of bones to feet. It's redonkulous. So this one, I was actually pleasantly surprised that it gelled so much. Come on. See? How cool is that? This one really gelled. I was really surprised at how well that this one actually gelled. I just wanted to show you guys, share that with you. Many different ways that you can make chicken stock, chicken broth, whatever you want to call it, however you want to categorize it. Those are the ways that I know of to do it. So if you have a way that you like to use to make your chicken stock or chicken broth gel or just be more nutritious, or whatever tips or tricks that you have, go ahead and leave them in the comment section below. I'm sure that we would all love to learn from you. And so yeah, and then if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, share this video with anybody that you think might enjoy it, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. We will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.